Well, welcome to Chasing Squirrels, Season 2, Episode 7. I'm Pastor Mike. We have with us today Pastor Kayla, Pastor Tom, and Pastor Gabby. So excited to have the panel here. And we're working through a list of questions that we got last spring in church at Good Hope. We just put out, hey, what are some questions that you have? And these are questions that people asked, and we're trying to address them the best we can. And so today, Pastor Kayla is going to start us off with the question about sharing Christ in the workplace. How do we do that?
Yes, I'm pretty excited for this one because, I don't know, it's a big part of your faith in Jesus is sharing Jesus with the people you work with, people you spend every day with,
Right.
You spend a lot of time with these people. And I think, it would be a shame to spend, 5 days out of the week with people for years on end, and then they never even knew you were a Christian or never got invited to church, So
Don't say
I
that
think it's
too
a good
loud.
thing. Yeah. So we're starting right off with the blunt, hard truth. But obviously there's that's a stressful thing, or it can be kind of scary to do. So how do we do that? Because I know I always in sharing my faith about Jesus with other people, I was always really scared about not wanting to scare people away.
Sure.
And so one of
Valid.
the tips I give is don't be obnoxious.
The crazy Christian.
You heard it here first. Don't be obnoxious.
And we can apply that
Hallelujah.
to many
That would
areas
change
of life.
the world.
The spirit is not weird.
Right.
Yeah, right. But one of the things that I think I see in the Bible a lot is setting an example
Absolutely.
and shining our light. So I think it's in Mark 5:16. It talks about shining our light to the believers. Well, I mean, to the believers, but also to the world. And I think that is one of the easiest and greatest ways to start sharing Christ in the workplace is setting that good example and being that light, so that they actually take notice of you first and say, hey, there's something different about you.
Absolutely.
As opposed to just coming on all strong and say, hey, I've got some really good news to share with you.
You're going to burn. Yeah.
Unless.
Let
me tell you about a minute.
Yeah.
Right. And I think just setting that good example, and being something that they're like, hey, what do you have? Or how is it that, maybe something difficult you're going through in life, you're still have peace, you still have joy, or, you're being honest and real, but, there's something different part of you. So I think, setting that good example is one of the biggest things.
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, too many Christians have tried to share their faith when their lives are a mess, when no one wants to be like them because they're just obnoxious human beings.
Yeah. When
they have, basically just a blunt and ignorant perspective on the world, and then they think people are going to want what they have. And why would they? It makes no sense,
Right.
Right.
But if we can rise above the say the junk and all the arguments and all the hate of today's culture and show the love of God in our everyday life where people know you're not just putting it on, because we've been working together for the last 2 years and you've hit these roadblocks just like everybody else, and you've handled it differently. What is it that drives you?
Right.
It reminds me of a missions evaluation thing that I heard about at a conference where they had 2 missionary teams going into this country, and they were both doing business as missions. One did business first and then, share their faith second. That was in their priority list. We're going to do business first. We're going to win that battle, and then we'll see what happens with, sharing our faith and stuff.
Yeah.
And the other one was missions first, share our faith first, and then business second, and see how that goes. And one of them was 10, 100 times, I forget what the number was, but it was an astounding percentage more effective than the other. And so which one do you think would be so much more effective in sharing the gospel and bringing people to Christ? Business first, gospel second, or gospel first, business second? Which would be more effective?
Business first.
It was business first.
Yeah.
I would say
Because when you live well,
Yep.
you succeed, then people are like, hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
Whereas with the ones who did business second, their business wasn't good. It wasn't successful. And so people are like, well, whatever you have to say is going to be stupid because you're not succeeding. But the ones that were succeeding, they're providing jobs, they're giving people opportunities, people are seeing how they're making it work, and they're like, wow, how are you making this work?
Right.
You know, so if we can live life well, then it's naturally going to draw people to us and like, what's going on there? If we live life poorly and yet we still want to share our faith, it's going to push people away because they're going to be like, first of all, you're an idiot. And second, I don't need to hear what you have to say, you know, and that's not good. But if you're looked up to, if you are respectable, if you've really overcome in situations and you're somebody who gives and who leads and, you know, who is honest and who has strong character, then people are going to care what you have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, one of the other, I don't know, like a practical tip of like opening doors for other people once you've set that good example. Obviously, I think that is first, you know, set that good example. But then also like take interest in other people's lives.
That's a big one.
Like, my goodness, if you take interest in the people you're working with, like, and you just ask them questions about their life, ask them questions about their kids, and just listen, then it just like opens doors. They feel cared for. They and they should, you know, that it should be genuine, be genuine interest.
Yeah. And I do think that's something that needs to be said because sometimes in the Christian world, there's the idea, oh, I should fake this and I should fake this and I should fake this and then everything will work. Like, no,
they'll see through it.
It's
I'll
the
pretend
gospel
to care.
of truth, right? Yeah, it needs to be true. It needs to be real.
Yes.
We need to work on our own hearts first, or else it's going to be just this disingenuous mess. And everybody sees through it. It's not hard.
Yeah, especially we're seeing it now with Gen Z. They can see through anything.
Every generation could.
Right.
When I was a kid, you could see hypocrisy in the older people and fake in the older people. It's just when you're young, it's easy to see that because you haven't been tainted and you're not pulled by all these different forces, you know.
Yeah, and I feel like this would have the opposite effect because then they see that you're faking it. Yeah, they're gonna run away.
Right. Absolutely, we saw that with friendship evangelism back in the olden days, where
the G12 or whatever.
You'd pretend to be somebody's friend, and then you share Christ with them, and if it doesn't go well, you abandon them.
Oh my!
You know, like that. I mean, that's not how they taught it.
Oh, sure, right? But that was it. Yeah,
that's how it.
That's kind of how it happened.
That's how. Yeah, that's how it happened.
It's almost better to build a friendship first and have that rapport, and then they'll see why you live your life the way that you live your life, and ask you questions, and then you can answer the questions.
Right. But you need to be prepared. If you want to be a friend to somebody, be a friend for life for them, if they choose Christ or not.
Yeah,
you know, and this is actually in the Bible. You know, what's the greatest commandment?
We just talked about this Wednesday
at youth group, which was a few Wednesdays back for you guys. So the greatest commandment, love God with everything you got. And then Jesus wouldn't let that go. The question was, what's the greatest? And he did not specifically answer that question. He said, what are the most important two? Because they blend together. You can't have one without the other. Right. And the second one is love your neighbor as yourself. Yeah. And taking an interest in people, caring what's going on in their lives, wherever they're at, if they agree with you or disagree with you, whatever's going on in their life, loving people, caring about people, and having it actually be real, you know, Christian fake. That is a beautiful thing. And in today's world, as it can get shallower and shallower as we live in a more media culture and it's less about, those deeper personal relationships. If someone actually cares, boy, what a treasure.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like if people don't if they know that you're faking it, they're going to think that you think you're better than them, you know, because you're sharing I know how to do this. I know how to live life. I have this secret, So they're just going to think they think they're better than me. They just want to teach me how to live life. And
Well, and I always thought if you're faking it, then what you're saying is fake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you have to fake it, it's because you don't have something real.
Right.
If you have something real, you don't have to fake it.
Right.
So, I mean, we're portraying Christianity as fake if we are faking things as Christians.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes like being real means admitting when you've messed up too.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And so like, I know we follow a lot of Craig Groeschel stuff as he says, everyone would rather follow a leader who is always real than who is always right.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And so like, it's just, I think that can apply not even just to leadership. Like people would rather listen to a Christian who is always real than one who is always right. And like,
absolutely.
Like, I don't know. I think sometimes even admitting like, maybe like say if you're in the case of learning and how to share with people and like, maybe you accidentally faked it at first, like apologize for it and say, I'm sorry and like make up for it. And usually in that I've found you'll create great friendships.
Well, everybody has been in the position of realizing that they're wrong.
Yeah.
Realizing they handled something poorly, realizing they did something that actually didn't have wasn't a positive thing, and they thought it was going to be right, but it turned out to be wrong. Mm-hmm. Everyone's gone through that realization. Now the question is, how do we handle it?
Right.
And if we handle it in a godly way, by repentance, admitting your fault, being honest about it,
confessing to the other person and saying,
sorry. Right, actually bringing it up, things like that.
Yeah.
Then people who have never experienced that are going to be like, wow, I've been in that position and I just pretended I was still right.
Right.
Well, and it'll be something that'll be interesting, and it can be something that opens a door to being real on a deeper level. And, so just living, actually putting your faith into practice, not in a sharing your faith way, but in a living it out in relationship with people is the biggest way it opens the door.
Sure. I think I found a chunk of verses that will really kind of echo what we're saying is Ephesians chapter 4, verses 1 through, I don't know where I'll stop. I'll stop somewhere. It says, I therefore, a prisoner of the Lord, so this is Paul, I beseech you to walk worthy of the calling of with which you were called. And I'm reading New King James Version. With all lowliness and gentleness, with long suffering, bearing with another in love, endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. There is one body and one Spirit, just as you were called into one hope of your calling, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is above all and through all and in you all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of encapsulates a lot of what we're talking about is like,
absolutely
walk worthy, but it also has like a little bit of these qualifications like lowliness, gentleness, long suffering, like spending some time and like not necessarily suffering with people, but like
long
not
suffering
being above,
means being very patient.
Right. Yeah. But also not being above people's problems. Like, meaning like you can help people through things.
Right. Just be real.
Yeah. All of those things I think are a great way to share Christ to people in the workplace. And also just like, another fun saying is hurt people,
right?
And healed people, help heal people,
exactly.
And free people, So those things, and so like
100%
doesn't mean that you can't help someone when you're going through something. I think that's another conversation we could probably have. Right. But
for sure, how you go through things,
right? But God cares enough about you, so go to God, go to someone if you need to get something right, and then you'll be able to like talk about that,
right? And the deeper your faith, the deeper your ability to really truly walk with God, the more effective this is going to be.
Yes.
Because if you actually think you're better than other people, and then you pretend you're not, that
it's going to come out.
It's going to come out, and it's going to be hypocrisy and fake, and it's going to create all these problems that we've talked about already.
Yeah.
But if you've actually gotten to the place where you can see other people through the eyes of the Lord, then you can actually care.
That was another thing I had written down that I thought was super, super important is the importance of prayer, because obviously when you're dealing with a workplace, you don't like everybody at your workplace.
Not always.
You don't always.
I work at church.
I was like, we can't raise our hands here because we all work together. But like the importance of prayer and praying for your coworkers, but also you guys can pray to ask God to give you a heart for that person, to see them the way God sees them. Because there are probably people in your workplace that you're like, I am not about to share Christ with them because I don't care to have a conversation with them more than I have to. And, like you just deal with them the absolute minimum, but Jesus died for them too. Yeah. And it is super, super important that if, you're like, I know I should share Christ, but I don't really like this person. Well, first start with your heart.
Yeah.
You really need to start with your heart, and you can pray and ask God to change your heart and to see them the way he sees him. And I think that is just so, so important.
Right.
Yeah, and I think also praying for an opportunity, like an opening.
Yes.
Sometimes, like if the
Versus
person
trying to force it.
if the person comes to you and talks about something they're going through, that's a huge door.
Yeah, take those opportunities.
Yeah.
Don't
be weird.
Right. And I think knocking down the door does a lot of damage.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
If a person's not ready, why? That's self-centered. Oh, I shared my faith. The person threw a bottle at me at the end of the day, but
I want a soul to the Lord.
Right, and
it's about us anyways. Wait,
right, and and they just started nodding so that you'd go away finally. And that's just wildly unhelpful.
Right.
Praying for people, having the discernment to know when to speak, when not to speak.
Yeah.
Hugely important.
Listen to the Holy Spirit on that one. Just pray and seek God with what you're supposed to do. And with different coworkers, it might actually look different. Because they're different people.
For sure. Yeah, because again, that makes it not about you,
right,
but about them.
Yeah.
So it's super, super important. A couple things that I wrote down about this question, some scriptures. We'll go to 1 Thessalonians 4, 11 and 12. It says, and to make it your ambition to lead a quiet life, you should mind your own business and work with your hands just as we told you, so that your daily life may win the respect of outsiders and so that you will not be dependent on anybody. So if, that doesn't mean everybody needs to have, a labor job or, a blue collar job. It's fine to have another type of job. But the point here is, be diligent, be a good worker, be someone who is able to take care of yourself and then help other people.
Yeah.
And that will win the respect of outsiders.
Right.
And if the Christians are the ones who always need somebody's help, who are always behind on their projects, who are, doing a bad job. I've heard people say that they've been, persecuted at work and they got fired for being a Christian, and they got fired for being a bad employee.
Yeah, that happens.
It had nothing to do with their faith. That might have been extra irritating, but it wasn't why they got fired.
Right.
And they're just blaming that when just tell you what, work harder, show up on time for work, do what you're told. These sort of basic things, be a good employee.
Yeah.
Everybody wants good employees.
Right.
So work hard, then that's that whole thing of, earning the respect of other people.
Yeah, I think another thing, sometimes people forget that the Great Commission is for everyone, not just for pastors or church staff, And actually, people need to understand that, because sometimes pastors, they're never going to meet that person.
Oh, yeah.
Because they don't, they work in the church.
In fact, it's much harder.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I used to, I always worked outside of the church and that sort of thing. And of course, I didn't start off as a pastor when first day I was a believer. And, you're interacting with people all the time who have questions, who disagree. And as a pastor, it's much harder.
Yeah.
Because, I work at the church and you're wildly busy and there's always something going on. And so you're kind of stuck in the Christian world. And, so it is a thing for everyone. And I think trying to get a balance between urgency and complacency is important, because everybody, I don't know, if Jesus comes back tomorrow, then this is a bad strategy. But if Jesus comes back in 100 years, then this is a good strategy. So there you go. If I knew Jesus was coming back tomorrow, I'd go to Walmart and I'd start preaching by the checkouts.
We should try it.
But I don't think Jesus is coming back tomorrow. And so I think if Jesus comes back even in a year, that would be a detrimental strategy.
Sure. Yeah.
It's going to be harmful rather than helpful, even if it's just delayed, maybe even a month. I don't know. But if it's tomorrow, that's what I'm going to go do, because we got no time, and there you go. But we need to have a sense of urgency in, say, sharing our faith with people in the workplace. But it doesn't have to be today.
Right.
It doesn't have to be tomorrow. And if, let's say, every Christian won one person in the next 10 years, it would change the world.
Sure.
You know, and then if it was another person in the 10 years after that, by then, you know, maybe 30 years, the whole world is saved. You know, like, it doesn't have to be 5 people a day or, you know, like.
Sure, right.
But if that's the average, like one every 10 years, I think we'd be doing really, really well.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Right. And I think another thing that's important too is, I don't know, I cringe a little bit when I see like the stuff about the Crusades when they say like, I won like 400 souls, like, which,
Right.
yeah, neither here nor there. But I used to do a lot of street ministry in Dallas when we went to school there. And a lot of people would be so discouraged because they're like, man, I talked to this person for 3 hours about Jesus and they just were so upset with me the whole time. And at first I was like, I have no idea what to say to that because I'm like, you're doing what you're supposed to say. But then eventually, thankfully, you know, if you ever try and find something, the Bible has an answer for it. So look into the Bible. And 1 Corinthians 3:7 says, it's neither he who plants is anything nor he who waters, but God who gives the increase. And so like,
Right.
I want to say this to someone, maybe if this person was asking this question because they're having a hard time sharing, live a life of integrity and then tell them about Jesus when the right moment comes up.
Yep.
And then trust God, you know, because like, I like to think of it like baseball. Like the first base is the first time they hear something about Jesus, right? Second base, third base, and home, you know, et cetera. Like we have no idea where we are on that.
Right.
Right.
Like, yes, the person who leads them from maybe third base to home gets the credit, which I still think is cringe, but they get the credit to lead people to Christ. But
Sure.
really, it was all that work before. You never know if it was like maybe that one uncle that you had that is that crazy Christian that somehow made you think about learning about Christ. And then it was someone who did something for you, someone who had a cool life and you wanted to live like them.
Yeah.
Like, you never know. And so,
Yeah.
It's a seed that you're putting
right.
in
And
person's
yeah.
life.
And it says, right after that, it says, now he who plants and he who waters are one, and each one will receive his own reward according to his own labor. So like, as long as you just put your hand to the plow and just keep working and just live your life the way that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And then if you have a moment to tell them about Jesus, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
You'll be okay.
And
like,
it is-
Paul would not be offended when he would go to places when they wouldn't receive him.
Oh, he was
Like,
rejected constantly.
Yeah, he's like, just wipe the dust off your feet and keep moving because
Right, exactly.
that's the mission that
Let
we
your
have.
peace return to you, you know?
Right. And it's like that saying where offense is taken, not give, or no, wait, how do I say this right? Offense is taken, not given. There we go. That's what it
There
is.
you go.
So you can like take offense.
I have a scripture I want to read, but I want to tell a funny before that.
You can tell it funny.
So years ago, at church, not this church, but a previous over in Big Fork, one of our church members came up to me and said, "Pastor, I need to talk to you, but don't take offense." And I said, "Well, that depends." This guy liked puns. He you know,
Okay.
he was super cringe with
Sounds like
dad
an
jokes
awesome
and
person.
puns and stuff. Yeah, he's great.
I love that.
And so I said, "Well, that depends. Do you have a fence?" You know, and he said, "Well, I do." And I said, "Well, can I have it?" And he said, "Sure." So I literally took his fence, and
You literally took it.
I took it. Yeah.
Oh,
And
my.
I still have, you know, it was those big green poles, you know, with the
Like
the
he went
rolled
and
up
like took a
fence.
piece of his fence out for you.
I took the whole fence. I took his whole fence. I still have it. So, Steve, how you doing, man? Hope you're out there.
Michael, take your fence.
Yeah. So if you anyway,
And you
so I
you
did-
actually walked that through. Like you like
yeah, I
just
still
kept
have
going.
it. I have the fence. Yeah,
That's
it
hilarious.
was so fun. Yeah,
I'd just be like, wait, that's too much. I'm just kidding.
yeah. No, I needed a fence, so had to keep the deer out of the garden, man.
Oh my gosh.
So, but verse
Did it
13,
keep you out of the garden too? Anyways.
it didn't. I was in there. I grew a whole bunch of Brussels sprouts that year. It was fantastic. All right, chapter 14 of Romans, verse 13, going back to the idea of, is this all about us, or is maybe God involved too?
Right. That's a fun question.
Yeah. Therefore, let us stop passing judgment on one another. Instead, make up your mind not to put any stumbling block or obstacle in the way of a brother or sister. Now, this is talking about helping one another inside the Christian world, but I think this applies also in general. God is working on people.
Yeah.
God is dealing with people. don't mess that up.
Yeah.
At the very least, do no harm.
Yeah.
Then if you can add something, great.
Yep.
But guess what? God already loves them.
Yep.
God already has a plan for their life. The Holy Spirit is speaking to them if they shut that out or not. And so it's not that, God is asleep and we'd better do his job for him.
Right.
It's that God is at work and we can do little things that he calls us to do to help or facilitate or do our little part.
Right.
But if we see it as like, this is my job to save the world.
Right.
Well, that's a Messiah complex, and you put yourself as an idol, and you're just in the wrong place, the wrong mentality.
Right. And we're not saying this to like come down on people. It's more so to take the weight off your back. Like the responsibility
free.
for someone coming to Christ is not on you.
Right.
Right.
It's your responsibility to be
tell
faithful.
them, and to tell them and live that, but they still have to make that choice. And then like God is working on in them, and like
Right.
you never know where God is on that, and don't try to be God.
Right. Exactly.
That's what I would say.
Yeah. Live well. It works better for you.
It works great for you.
And
If you're content.
and it gives weight to what you say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then pray. Well, back to Colossians 4. It really was kind of one of the points that Gabby made already. Colossians 4, starting in verse 3, it says, "And pray for us too, that God may open a door for our message, so that we may proclaim the mystery of Christ, for which I am in chains." Pray for an open door.
Yeah.
Yep.
Don't just bash down the door while you're living like a fool and then make everybody mad about what your perspective is. That's super unhelpful. Live well, live a life of integrity, serve Jesus well, make it real in your heart, and then that will open doors and you can share. But if you're not living it out, then you're faking it, and everybody's going to smell a rat, and it's going to be a real problem.
Free people, help free people, healed people, help heal people, and hurt people, hurt people.
You reproduce what you are.
Yeah.
You don't reproduce what you want. That's the big challenge with parenting. Like if you want to have healthy kids who love Jesus and you're an unhealthy person who is faking it, you're not going to raise
No, right.
Not go so well.
No, and that's a bummer. I remember the first time my oldest boy did something that was like me, that I didn't like about me. I was like, oh no. And it because you don't get what you want, you reproduce who you are. And so maybe that's a good way to finish off this episode. If you want to share Christ in the workplace, be an authentic believer, work on your own relationship with Christ, deepen your spiritual heart, and then, doors will naturally open. So that's the way to go. All right. That is episode 7. Next time, we're going to come back and I am going to ask the question, can you still honor your father while not having a relationship with him? Ooh.
Yeah.
See you next time.